Welcome back, everyone. Have you ever wanted to completely peel back the layers of a massive cinematic achievement just to see exactly how it ticks? Well, today we are deconstructing Christopher Nolan's breathtaking adaptation of Homer's 3,000-year-old epic, The Odyssey. We're going to look at the structural, literary, and psychological blueprints of this film to really understand how a director, who's famous for mind-bending sci-fi and historical thrillers, right, tackled the foundational myth of Western literature. Okay, let's dive right into this. The very first thing we absolutely have to talk about is the sheer scale. $250 million. That's enough to fund a small country. But here, it's the massive budget Nolan commanded to bring the ancient Mediterranean to life. This immediately establishes that we aren't just looking at some quiet, dusty historical drama. No way. This is a cinematic juggernaut, utilizing unprecedented physical production to tell a story of ancient survival. So here is our blueprint for this explainer. 1. A massive IMAX epic. 2. Translating a complicated man. 3. The psychology of survival. 4. Wives, sons, and waiting. And finally, 5. Expanding the Homeric universe. Let's start with Section 1. A massive IMAX epic. To populate this incredibly mythic Bronze Age world, Nolan assembled an absolutely massive ensemble. I mean, look at this. Matt Damon anchors the film as the legendary king and strategist Odysseus, and he's supported by Tom Holland as his son Telemachus and Anne Hathaway as Penelope. And then we see powerhouses like Zendaya, Elliot Page, Samantha Morton, Lupita Nyong'o, and Robert Pattinson rounding out this beautifully fractured universe. But to truly capture the epic scale of that incredible cast, Nolan turned to his signature format. The film was shot entirely in 70mm IMAX. To put that into perspective, literally only 41 cinemas across the entire globe are actually equipped to project it at its absolute highest resolution. And it isn't just about the cameras either, it's the practical effects. Nolan didn't just rely on CGI for the massive battles. Actually, they built a full-scale Trojan horse and they filmed right inside of the whole shebang. It's just this massive testament to human creativity over digital shortcuts. Moving right along to Section 2, translating a complicated man. Now, at the heart of this adaptation is a really fascinating cultural debate. Homer has been translated for centuries, often favoring this grandiose, archaic style, using terms like a hero of many wiles. But Nolan was actually inspired by Emily Wilson's modern translation. Wilson, who was the first woman to fully translate the epic into English, by the way, prioritized the nimble gallop and speed of Homer's verse, using much more down-to-earth language. Now, some traditionalists strongly prefer that older, archaic grandeur and were pretty frustrated by the modern shifts. But on the flip side, literary critics have highly praised her choice to translate the opening description of Odysseus simply as complicated, because of its accessible, robust energy. We're not taking a side here, but it's crucial to know this is the foundation Nolan built on. And it was exactly that framing, "Tell me about a complicated man," that became Nolan's real anchor. As Nolan himself noted, Odysseus isn't just a soldier. He's a brilliant, wily, and deeply flawed military strategist. Wilson's translation allowed Nolan to strip away the sort of unapproachable myth of the guy and focus on a deeply contradictory human being who's constantly battling his own culpability. Which brings us to Section 3, the psychology of survival. So Nolan uses Hoyte van Hoytema's 70mm cinematography not just to show off pretty landscapes, but to intentionally diminish the human scale. Against the vast oceans, the sheer cliffs, and burning cities, Odysseus and his men look incredibly small. The natural world just utterly overwhelms them. This isolating visual style directly connects to Odysseus's emotional distance from home. Basically, the wider the landscape grows, the more isolated and abstract the very concept of home becomes for him. But what is truly fascinating here is how this profound isolation actually sounds. Ludwig Göransson's brilliant score doesn't just play your standard triumphant hero music. No, he uses a highly specific technique called a risset rhythm during the battles. This is a remarkable auditory illusion where a tone seems to continually ascend in pitch without ever actually reaching a peak. It perfectly, and honestly anxiously, captures the feeling of a perpetual, unresolved journey. It's the sheer terror of movement that never actually arrives at a destination. We see this intense burden of survival etched right into Matt Damon's calculated, super paranoid performance. The film frames his genius invention, the Trojan horse, not as some glorious victory, but as a severe violation of Zeus's law. It's a deception that haunts his every single step homeward. To survive Circe, the Cyclops, in the raging sea, Odysseus has to constantly adapt, lie, and become ruthless. And the terrifying question the film poses is this: after becoming so many different ruthless people just to survive, does he even have a recognizable self left to return to? Let's look at the home front in Section 4: Wives, Sons, and Waiting. In true Nolan fashion, think Memento or Oppenheimer, the film does not tell a simple straight line. It uses a non-linear narrative. Instead of just following Odysseus for 10 years sequentially, the film brilliantly intercuts his grueling journey with the simultaneous struggles of his family back home in Ithaca. The timeline fractures. It shows us the fall of Troy right alongside Penelope fending off suitors, and Telemachus searching for a father he barely even knows. And this structure is vital because in this adaptation, waiting is treated as its own brutal form of action and endurance. Anne Hathaway gives a fierce, completely magnetic portrayal of Penelope. She isn't just a passive symbol of loyalty here. She is a ruler maintaining a household under siege by noxious, arrogant suitors, led brilliantly, by the way, by Robert Pattinson's Antinous. Hathaway shows us a woman where profound love and deep resentment coexist. She is damaged by the sheer emotional cost of waiting for a ghost. Meanwhile, Tom Holland's Telemachus gives us a harsh look at the generational trauma of being raised by a legend you don't actually know. Think about it. He has grown up in the shadow of a myth, inheriting the privileges of Odysseus' name, sure, but also the incredibly heavy burden of his disappearance. It's a painfully profound insight. An absent parent can be the absolute center of your universe, without ever actually being present in it. And finally, Section 5: Expanding the Homeric Universe. Nolan didn't just stop at Homer. He wove other sources together masterfully to build out this world. For example, from Virgil's Roman epic, the Aeneid, we get Sinon, played by Elliot Page. In the film, Sinon is a young Ithacan soldier left behind to trick the Trojans, bearing the ultimate betrayal of the Trojan horse, guilt on behalf of Odysseus. Then, from Aeschylus's tragedy Agamemnon, the film draws the chilling advice Agamemnon gives Odysseus in the underworld, basically saying, return to Ithaca in disguise, because a returning king cannot trust his own household. And finally, pulling from modern historian Eric H. Klein's book, 1177 BC, Nolan frames the mysterious invading sea peoples as a symptom of the actual Bronze Age collapse, suggesting Odysseus's deceit at Troy may have literally unraveled an entire civilization. As the character Halcyon notes in the film, the hardest journey was never across the sea, but learning how to live once it was over. Nolan grounds this 3,000-year-old mythology in the highly relatable modern psychology of surviving war and trying to return to civilian life. Ithaca is a destination, yes, for sure, but it cannot return the years stolen by war, or erase Penelope's trauma, or somehow recover Telemachus' childhood. So, what does this all mean for us? It leaves us with this. Can a hero ever truly return home? If survival requires you to strip away your humanity, is the person who finally steps foot on the shores of Ithaca actually the same person who left? It's an incredible exploration of identity, guilt, and time. Thank you so much for joining me for this structural breakdown, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning what it really means to survive the journey. Catch you next time.